What do you mean by that? Like, what is the Bitcoin DeFi space? Is that something that you guys are pioneering?
On Bitcoin, that was never the thing. The Bitcoin was just supposed to be like you hold BTC, it's digital gold, but it's nothing more than that.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the BlockHash Podcast here with Jeroen, the Chief Operating Officer for Persistence Labs and Persistence One. Really going to dive into Bitcoin cross-chain swaps and how they secure that with Bitcoin and some of the functionality that they offer and what makes them truly unique in the space. So Jeroen, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you today and really dive into Persistence a little bit deeper. How you doing, man?
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me, Brandon. Very nice to be here. First of all, congrats on where you guys are. I think on the podcast, you've done so many recordings, and it's an honor actually to be here. So very happy to be one of the guests. Very.
You have no idea, so many recordings at this point.
Yeah, it's impressive. Actually, just started a podcast on my side as well. So I know what it takes. Don't know what it takes to do so many recordings, but it's an interesting one for sure. But yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited for the conversation today.
Yeah. We'll have a good conversation. Let's start off with a little bit about yourself. I'm sure people will be curious. Jeroen, what is your background, your story? How did you wind up within the world of Web3? Was it anything in particular? Is it boring? Is it exciting? Give us the 411.
It's not boring. I'll tell you that to begin with. It's been very exciting. Hi everyone. My name's Jeroen. I'm the COO at Persistence Labs. I'm from Belgium. I started actually my career in traditional finance and consulting after having kind of been born and raised in Belgium. Kind of wanted to explore the world a little bit, so I thought consulting was good. Actually graduated as a business engineer, which is kind of a combination between engineering and finance. So started off in finance, traditional consulting, a lot of tech and IT actually also. So worked at Accenture for a little bit. Then kind of moved around the world. I lived in Paris for a couple of years. Then moved to Singapore with the same consulting firm. Worked for a lot of big banks mostly. Always on the finance and the risk side of things, quite combined with the tech aspect, often like creating solutions on the tech side for those bigger banks. So did that for a while, and then at some point kind of got a little bit bored of the traditional finance world, and that was I think in 2013, I believe. Started to look out for something else and ended up joining a startup in Singapore, which recently, which launched just a couple of months before, and kind of was working on that startup and took care of everything in Singapore. We did fashion tech, so completely different from what I'm doing now. But it was in a way like similar to what I was used to. It's kind of streamlining tech operations and the business side of everything, together with the finance, kind of running the entire operations in Singapore, while the two kind of co-founders of the company moved to the UK to kind of found the company there as well and kind of expand from there. We did quite well actually, was selected for fastest growing company in Singapore like 2 years in a row, which didn't mean we were the fastest growing. We were like part of a list of very fast growing companies. Went very well, actually very exciting as well to kind of grow that business. But to be honest, I got a little bit bored during COVID because we did fashion tech. So we did a lot of like suits and shirts, but during COVID, didn't sell a lot of suits and shirts because no one was going to the office. No one was having weddings. So there were no suits or shirts to be made or to be sold. So started looking around for other things. Company still going, by the way, still doing phenomenal actually. But I got out. And basically, I started to focus full time on everything that was crypto. I was already quite interested from before. Obviously, did my own kind of version of trading and like little things that didn't work as you want it to be, but kind of went through the ups and downs of the different cycles. But just decided it's just too interesting to not look into it in more detail, and really started researching a lot. Started to kind of reconnect with the people that I knew that were in the space, and eventually ended up with Persistence, which was actually founded by an ex-colleague of mine. So I joined the company with Persistence back in 2021. That was sorry. And took on, like, since then, different roles within the company. I've done a bit of BD, have done a lot of product, like also management, a lot of partnerships, kind of ecosystem growth across the products that we've had in the couple of years that we've been operating. And now currently in my current role, look after everything that's related to Persistence, like from start to end, pretty much. That's kind of short introduction.
I gotta ask, what is fashion tech? I don't know if I've heard that before.
It's how would I explain? Like, traditional retail, you kind of go into a store and you just order or you just buy whatever is there. Like you can't have anything to measure. What we did is we had a tech component combined to it, where you kind of have your measurements taken once, whether that's physically or whether that's through some sort of an app where you measure yourself, like like using the camera. But we basically use the data of your measurements, your body size, like whatever the form, like everything you have, keep that live. And now from then onwards, since you have your measurement profile, you can order any type of garment, like fully made to your measurements. But it requires a lot of supply chain management, because we had like fabrics being shipped from all over the world to these manufacturers. So it's kind of fashion tech. It's a tech platform behind like fashion operators that are able to sell stuff made to measure for their customers.
Okay, interesting. So it's like how to get the right garments, how to measure it correctly, fit it to the body, that kind of stuff.
Correct. I never have to worry about is my size correct? Like I can now, and everyone who's a customer of the company obviously can buy their shirts or suits or whatever pants made to their measurements, and they just have to choose from the website. It will be delivered to their doorstep without having to worry, does this fit or will I have to return this?
Yeah, I've seen some tech kind of around that. I was at CES back in January of this year in Las Vegas. I don't know if you're familiar with that expo or not.
No, I haven't been. No.
But they have a ton of, I guess, what you'd call fitness tech-ish stuff. Like they have these mirrors, these smart mirrors now that can tell what sizes you are, and you can see the clothing on yourself before, without having to actually put it on. They got some cool stuff. I guess that could be fashion tech too, more or less.
That's all part of it. Yeah. And it's honestly, now I think with AI, this kind of will probably increase the adoption quite quickly. I think it's quite impressive what we could do. A couple of years back, we just asked a bunch of questions that are almost not related to really how you look or your size, but we could come up pretty accurately with, okay, this will your size, this will be your size. So I'm sure now, in the last couple of years, I'm sure it's advanced quite a bit. But yeah, pretty interesting space for sure.
Looking at Persistence Labs, I'm very curious at what you guys do, because I know that you guys are all about, Bitcoin DeFi. There's DeFi and then there's, DeFi for Bitcoin, kind of essentially. What do you mean by that? What is the Bitcoin DeFi space? Is that well established? Is that something that you guys are pioneering? Give us a little bit more insight.
So, first of all, it's a term, Bitcoin DeFi. I think maybe we don't even need to have the term Bitcoin DeFi. In a way, I think it's kind of DeFi, but on Bitcoin. But currently it's being used as a differentiator between DeFi, I think, on Ethereum or other ecosystems, and the DeFi, which is kind of coming up on Bitcoin. I think so far, if anyone would talk to you about DeFi, everyone by definition kind of assumes that's typically just on Ethereum mostly, and then obviously you have a few other chains, but it's not on Bitcoin. And there's a reason for that, because Bitcoin has never been the center of activity when it comes to DeFi. It was just not possible. Now, more recently, there have been, quite a few innovations around the Bitcoin ecosystem, a couple of important kind of advancements. And there's a lot of projects who have seen that and are also kind of diving into the opportunity to kind of recreate a DeFi ecosystem on top of Bitcoin this time. Bitcoin never had that programmability aspect of it, which Ethereum had. Ethereum pioneered that in a way with smart contracts, right? And really having that programmability aspect as the center of the Ethereum ecosystem. Now on Bitcoin, that was never the thing. The Bitcoin was just supposed to be like you hold BTC, it's digital gold, but it's nothing more than that. The programmability was kind of left behind as a problem to maybe or maybe not solve later. Now that has kind of been tackled or is being tackled at the moment, like programmability through various things, whether it's directly on the Bitcoin L1 itself, or whether it's through actual like layer twos on top of Bitcoin, or even like a lot of side chains now. But so Bitcoin DeFi in a way is growing, right? Like, so people are actually trying to build DeFi applications on Bitcoin. And I expect that everything we've seen so far on Ethereum, we'll see on Bitcoin as well at some point. Just a matter of time, I think. At least everything that's kind of successful in Ethereum, people will try it on Bitcoin as well, because it's such a much bigger ecosystem, right? Like, it has so many more holders, users. We don't know yet whether these people will be DeFi like curious or not. But the user base is there. The attention on Bitcoin is so much bigger. The value of the asset itself, it's 3, 4, 5 times bigger still than Ethereum, right? So I think everything will kind of be tried on Bitcoin as well. So with that massive growth in like Bitcoin DeFi, or like whatever that's coming up there, especially all these like layer twos, similar as how you have Optimism, Arbitrum, Base, whatever on the Ethereum side, you have tons of Bitcoin like side chains or L2s. We already see it. There's about 50 projects at least that I know of that are building layer twos on Bitcoin. So what we see with persistence is that that's all great, and it's all good for DeFi and Bitcoin to kind of come up and bloom. But if there's no interoperability between those layers, I think there's going to be a lot of hurdles for users to kind of explore those different things. And we see that on the Ethereum side as well. There is actually a lot of activity between those chains, or from one side chain to another. And on Ethereum, it's still relatively simple to go back to Ethereum and then from Ethereum to another layer, layer 2. On the Bitcoin side, that's pretty tricky. It's pretty difficult because Bitcoin itself is very slow. So eventually what we're looking at building or establishing is really an interoperability solution between the Bitcoin layer 2s and make it very easy to do things between the different L2s rather than to focus on one itself.
You guys also make it much faster. You provide low slippage of fees. Is there a process that is put in place to make that happen through persistence?
So typically when you would think of like interoperability or like moving assets between chains, I think the first thing that people think of is like, okay, it's a bridge, right? You have a bridge, and from using a bridge, you can kind of bridge one asset from one chain to another. Now, we've thought about like this concept as well, obviously, and like there's nowadays newer ways of actually bridging, and it's still, in a way, it's still bridging, but we call it bridging without bridging, and we use something that's called intents. And maybe before kind of explaining that in detail, I can tell you a little bit more about intents and like why it is so important, I think, in crypto nowadays, and like in the design space in general for good user experience. So if we look at like crypto today, typically, if you want to perform an action, typically you say, okay, I want to do this in exactly this way. And then I'll give maybe an example. Like if you want to swap, let's say, one ETH for $3,000, you typically have to say, I want to swap one ETH for 3,000 or for the most amount of dollars I can get on Uniswap in Uniswap v3 using the pool which has these parameters. And like it's a very specific kind of trade that you give, and that's only like on one chain. Now that's quite complicated for most of the users to kind of figure out like, what do I have to do here? And how intents kind of come into the picture is they kind of try to simplify that entire thing, and they say, as a user, you just say what you want. Look, I want to sell one ETH. I want to get $3,000, and if I get that, I'm happy. I don't care what happens in the background. That's how it goes. And in a way, I would almost compare like when you order, let's say, something on Deliveroo or Uber Eats or something. You kind of decide, I want this food, and I want it to be delivered within, let's say, 20 or 25 minutes. I want it to be delivered to this address. Everything else, I actually don't care. Whether the guy uses a car or a motorcycle, or whether he takes this highway or the other highway, it doesn't matter. As long as it's that food and it arrives in 25 minutes, that's what I care about, right? And the same thing is true in crypto. Now it feels like whatever you want to do, you have to really define the routes. You have to define the car that the driver would use and stuff. but that's not great for user experience because you actually don't care about all these things. So with intents, you can kind of abstract that away. And then you have like professional participants in the market, typically market makers, come in and solve that intent in a way. They see, oh, someone has this intent. I will come in and I will fulfill that trade. And all the rest, like the user doesn't worry about. So that's what we use as well to fulfill these cross-chain orders. So in a very simple example, let's say you have on a Bitcoin layer one, let's call it Bitcoin L or Bitcoin A. You have Bitcoin A on that side, and you want to go to Bitcoin B on another chain. You don't you just say, assume it's one-to-one. You want to go from one to another. You don't care how it gets there. You just want someone to send you one Bitcoin B on chain B, and that's what this professional market maker will do. He will get your Bitcoin A on side A, and everything in the background doesn't matter to you. So that's basically what we do. We kind of make a marketplace of like users or retail and professional market makers who kind of come in and solve the user intent to get to the destination, which makes it very fast. They can fill that within less than a second. And yeah, I mean, well, I talked for a long time, so I'll pause here. Do you have any questions on that?
Yeah. So if you're able to apply intents to make the slippage a lot lower, to make it faster, to cut those corners, essentially, are you still able to maintain the same level of security as well for those swaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in a way, like you're cutting corners, but you're not really. In a way, it's like you just kind of offload the complexity of the transaction to someone else. Like whether the market maker then wants to hedge the trade he did in the background to kind of counteract like that. Now he has more balance on chain A than on chain B. That's up to him. But so that doesn't change anything. When it comes to security, it's actually a way more secure design compared to the traditional bridges. So typical bridges, you send assets from chain A to chain B. You would send them in a contract somewhere on chain A. They would be locked there. On chain B, they would be minted. And then basically, if you want to bridge back, you kind of burn them on one side, you get it back. So what it does, it creates these TVL kind of honeypots in these big contracts where you kind of have those bridged assets. Now, that's been, I mean, traditionally, we've seen a lot of bridge hacks. Typically, that's where they come from, right? Like there's just so much TVL in these bridges that it's very attractive for people to look at it. Oh, maybe I can hack this. Now, on the design that Intents uses, there's actually no TVL as such, except for the amount that is transferred at the specific time, which is like less than a second. This amount will be sent to the contract. It will be fulfilled on the other side. So the user will get his funds like within a second. And then for a very, very short amount of time, until it's verified that this trade has actually happened, that this order has been fulfilled, very short amount of time, it's locked into the contract until it's kind of released to the market maker to get their money back. So the TVL is never going to be higher than the amount of the actual trade. So there's no such thing as like a TVL honeypot. So it's actually a very clever design in a way, like where there's very limited amount of capital at risk at any point in time.
Do you think that Bitcoin Fi or DeFi on Bitcoin can be as big as DeFi on Ethereum? Like, do you see there being a really large ecosystem that can exist and thrive on Bitcoin natively, just like it has on Ethereum, or is there limitation to that? Because I know it's something relatively new that we've seen pop up in the last year or so, like with ordinals and whatnot. And I'm sure people will continue to explore it. Just curious, what direction you think that'll end up going.
I think I can be like even more bold with like what I think here. I think it will be way bigger than DeFi on Ethereum. I think BTCfi
Really?
will be way bigger. I mean, in a way, like I mean, I've seen other people say this. I've actually said as well at some point. It's like I actually think Ethereum is a testnet for Bitcoin. It's just maybe it's a bit extreme in terms of a comparison, but in a way, it wasn't possible yet on Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is like a bit more slow, a bit more like slower in terms of adoption, just because they want security over everything. And I think in a way, DeFi on Bitcoin will be way bigger, just because the adoption of Bitcoin is so much bigger than the adoption of ETH. I mean, Bitcoin dominance has been more than 50% for the longest time. If you look at now the amount of actually brain power in the space that is going to build on top of Bitcoin, I would be very surprised if it doesn't catch up quite quickly with everything on Ethereum. Of course, technically there will be some challenges and it will take a bit of time, but everything in a way has been kind of pioneered already on the Ethereum side, right? So there's a lot of innovation that has been done, and I think now can be condensed even in terms of timelines. So I wouldn't be surprised if it only takes like a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, for Bitcoin DeFi to actually overtake Ethereum DeFi, just because of the size of the asset, the community. Like, man, everyone knows Bitcoin. Like literally everyone in my family knows Bitcoin. No one knows Ethereum. And I think the power of that we kind of underestimate maybe in this industry. And yeah, in a way, like maybe last thing I'll say about this is like with Ethereum, we've kind of tried to bring the asset to the tech platform, right? Like we've tried to bring BTC to Ethereum, like in different forms, like Wrap BTC is the most prominent one, right? But in terms of liquidity, like it's less than 1% of the total Bitcoin supply that is kind of circulating on Ethereum. So it seems like bringing the asset to the tech hasn't really worked. So what's happening now is we're kind of bringing the tech to the asset itself, to the biggest asset, like 9th biggest asset in the world, if I'm not mistaken, right? So now we're bringing the tech there. I mean, I think there's a bigger chance of succeeding that than the other way around. So I'm very excited about Bitcoin DeFi in general.
Is there any concern, and I know for some people there are, about putting that much excess activity on Bitcoin's blockchain, because it's already very old and very slow relative to what we have today with, things like Solana, for example, that are much faster and more efficient, and probably, built better for DeFi than Bitcoin is. So is there any concern with doing that, or is it just a matter of developing infrastructure around Bitcoin so that it doesn't put a load on the chain?
Yeah, I think in a way, there's obviously concern about the scalability aspect, and especially when it comes to speed. But I think a lot of these things will be solved by the tech, and they're already there. Like the first ZK proofs are already inscribed on the Bitcoin network, which kind of makes it a lot more efficient. And in a way, I mean, I still see like Bitcoin as like could be a great settlement layer for all transactions. The actual activity will not happen on Bitcoin. It will happen on the layer twos, in my opinion. And then these layer twos will use Bitcoin to settle in the same way as how you see on Ethereum, like the user activity so much cheaper on these L2s, and then they settle on the L1. But now like there's almost no more gas fees on Ethereum because the chain doesn't need that much, right? So I do think the scalability problem will also on Bitcoin be solved through these like layer twos and different kind of forms of inscribing the data back onto the chain. But the economic security of Bitcoin will still be there, right? And in a way, it's also good for Bitcoin if we actually get a bit more activity, right? Because as it's now, like with the block rewards halving every 4 years, we will need more activity on Bitcoin to continue to make it kind of economically viable for miners. So I think it's a good thing, and we'll find a balance somewhere. But I think at the moment, I'm not too scared about the issues that would come from scalability issues. I think those will be relatively easy to solve, I think.
What are some of the assets that you see really starting to be built and designed for DeFi for Bitcoin? Is it very similar to things like ordinals, or do you think we'll see other products, that we see in very similar cases on Ethereum or on Solana or being built on Cardano or other chains in terms of, maybe a different type of financial rail or investment or DEXs, or what are some, can you do all of that on DeFi for Bitcoin, or, will you see more specific things or different use cases, or I guess better question is maybe what are you seeing?
I think we'll see mostly the same, to be honest. I mean, even if you look at like finance in the long term, like way before crypto, it's always kind of the same things that come back, right? Like people want to transfer money, they want to exchange money, they want to borrow against it. People want to create derivatives. You'll have like perps, you'll have options. Like you'll have the classic, I think, financial verticals that will come back. I'm not sure if there will be anything like crucially new that will not like be different from, let's say, what we have on the Ethereum side, I'm sure you'll have some sort of like, you actually have, right, like some sort of NFTs, like ordinal runes, like all these new things. In a way, it's also nothing completely new. It's kind of reproducing what's already there. But on the biggest asset that is there, which is Bitcoin. I don't expect, I mean, of course, I hope to be wrong. I hope there will be like a massive wave of new innovations that will kind of, what you call maybe like new financial rails or new crypto rails, but I'm not sure it will be. Like in a way, I think we'll create the same things, but like on crypto rails to begin with, which in a way, if you look at it, we haven't really completed that yet, right? Like we say crypto is kind of the new traditional finance system, but honestly, how many people in the real world actually use it? Still to be discussed and to be seen, like where we get like real world assets. I think is still like obviously a big case to be solved, and then real world usability in general. Yeah, still mainstream adoption is not there yet, right? So I think that would be a big one to get.
How can you interact with Bitcoin DeFi through persistence? I know you have a persistence DEX. Is that the primary way? And if so, what are some of those, options to interact with it?
The persistence DEX, as it is today, is actually not really ready yet to be used in Bitcoin DeFi. It's more of how do I call it? More of a legacy product that we have. It's currently using, or it's actually used for trading of XPRT, the main native asset of the persistence chain, and some other assets where there's been more and more pools created that will reflect this kind of adoption of Bitcoin. So we'll have pairs. We actually have a pair with Wrap BTC. But the main goal of the persistence DEX for now is to, first of all, because persistence chain is actually Cosmos-based chain, is to create liquidity for the XPRT token together with some Bitcoin-friendly tokens, I would call it, like Bitcoin paired tokens. So not sure if you're familiar with like projects like Babylon. They're building something where you can stake Bitcoin and you can earn rewards from there because you're securing other chains. So one play for the persistence DEX is to really build pairs with assets that are very Bitcoin native or like Bitcoin pegged in a way, not pegged, but like Bitcoin aligned in a way. I think that's the word I was looking for, Bitcoin aligned assets. And then the DEX itself can actually be connected with any of the other layer twos as well. Then it would, again, like in a way, you would see the persistence chain almost as a Bitcoin layer two, which I don't want to call it that way, but in a way it would facilitate also liquidity from any other pairs to BTC or any other forms of BTC. So that's kind of how the legacy DEX kind of fits into the picture. But the current product we're building is still under active development. Testnet will go live somewhere in September. It's kind of not integrated yet with the existing DEX. That's for a few months down the line.
How many more months down the line do you think when it'll come out, or will it come out this year in Q4?
So our mainnet launch for the Bitcoin swaps, I'll call let's say cross-chain Bitcoin swaps, that's still planned to go live this year, but only with a few chains. So there's 50 plus Bitcoin L2s. We plan to go live with a couple of those at the first go, connecting all of those and making it possible to swap from any form of BTC they have to any form of BTC they have on the other chain. So let's say you would be able to swap Stacks BTC for, let's say, Rootstock BTC, or you would be able to swap Rootstock BTC to whatever variant of BTC they have on different chains, right? So we do that for 3 to 4 probably, and that will still be this year. So September we aim to launch the testnet, and then Q4 it should be early to mid Q4 go to mainnet with that, and then for next year. So the roadmap for next year is really to onboard more and more of these prominent L2s, add more assets into that as well, and then start connecting with the different DEXs on these chains so that you can not go only from BTC variant to variant, but also you can go from any asset to any asset because you integrate with the DEXs on these different chains. So that's the roadmap actually for next year. Yeah.
It sounds like a busy roadmap.
Absolutely, it's still a lot of work, but it's all going very well, like so far,
Good.
and yeah, very very excited to be building in the space as well. It's been really fun.
When you say being able to swap from any asset to any asset, would you be able to swap like directly from an Ethereum DeFi asset to a Bitcoin DeFi asset and back and forth, like in that sense, like that level of interoperability?
Correct. I mean, Ethereum, we still have to decide whether we actually want to be connected like to Ethereum.
Hmm.
Um, Technically it's possible, right? Technically it's the same thing. It's more in terms of like a vision and an alignment thing. There's already a lot of projects that try to kind of tackle the interoperability between Ethereum and Bitcoin, and in a way I feel like there's so much opportunity on Bitcoin itself to just really build for the Bitcoin ecosystem itself without having to even think about, okay, there's 1% of the Bitcoin supply in Ethereum, how do we bring that back to Bitcoin?
Hmm.
I'd rather focus on the 99% of Bitcoin that is still locked on the Bitcoin L1s. So not 100% confirmed yet on the Ethereum side. We'll see. But what I was saying is more like you have already DEXs that are live on these Bitcoin L2s, and there you have other assets than just forms of Bitcoin. They might have stable coins, they might have their native token. And so the goal is to be able to trade any of that with any of the other assets on the other side, but always going through the Bitcoin pairs, basically, because I do believe that any of the DEXs on the Bitcoin L2s, their main liquidity pairs will be with their native form of BTC.
What would you say is, if you could pick one thing in particular that makes persistence stand out, that's unique about persistence compared to other swapping protocols, especially swapping protocols for Bitcoin? Is there a single factor that you'd say that really sets you guys apart?
I mean, I would say that the main focus on Bitcoin, I think not getting distracted by trying to quickly grab a market that's already there, which is the Ethereum side. Like we know there will be volume between Ethereum and Bitcoin for sure. Um, but I think we're really building for the long run, building for the vision that we have where like the bulk of activity will be between Bitcoin L2s, and really build for that rather than like building for what's already there. We're really building for something in the like more distant future. When I say more distant, I think like just a couple of months, maybe years down the road. But I think that's one main differentiator. Then obviously the intent-based architecture. I think not everyone is adopting that. I think there's still a lot of people trying to focus on the existing bridge architecture, connecting it through like other means than intent-based architecture, the traditional way of bridging. So I would say these things like mainly stand out, and of course like the persistence we have to continue and push that vision and kind of make it live.
The fall season is always very kind of crazy for the crypto industry, just like the spring is. And I think with what's already happened this past spring so far, I think we're in for an interesting ride, given all the things up in the air geopolitically and war and economy. And, I think some interesting things are going to happen in crypto. Are you guys going to be out and about in the market doing stuff? Like, are you going to be at some events or some conferences? What does your kind of extended roadmap look like for, the rest of this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I mean, obviously conferences are like with crypto an all year round thing. Actually, I just got back from Nashville a couple of weeks back where I had the
Oh,
biggest.
how was it?
It was good. It was very interesting conference. Like, and also good to see like there's actually so much attention for Bitcoin. Like it's not only I've been to a lot of conferences in the last 3-4 years, and very often it's mostly kind of projects that kind of come and talk to each other. Bit of an echo chamber in a way.
Yeah.
This is like you can actually see there's true interest in Bitcoin, like even for people who are not building in this space. So that's cool to see. There was obviously a lot of Bitcoin L2s there, like a lot of projects that are now building for Bitcoin that were not before. So it's great to see. But to answer your question, obviously a lot of events still planned for this year. The biggest ones I'll be attending will be in Korea. There's Korea Blockchain Week in September. There's Token 2049 in Singapore. So we'll be going there as well. There is, I think there's DEF CON in Bangkok later this year as well. Still to be seen, but might have to go there as well. And then there's still, I think, Cosmoverse in November in Dubai, and then there's actually Bitcoin MENA, if I'm not mistaken, also in November. So I think that will be a very big one for the Middle East, especially. So yeah, still looking to travel quite a bit, really meet with a lot of people, like really get the word out also. The good thing, like with what we're building, it's actually it's very nice. Like people really want to work with you because we're not really competing with the big or the ecosystems that are being built. We're actually trying to help and facilitate. So you're really kind of a connector in the ecosystem in a way, like both from a product perspective, but also from like BD or network perspective. So it's quite nice to attend conferences and kind of hang out with like-minded people and builders in the space.
Jeroen, this has been a really good episode and a really good conversation. I'm learning a lot about Bitcoin DeFi. I didn't even know that was a real thing outside of, just ordinals and people starting to build tokens here and there. So it's exciting to see the possibilities there, maybe how that expands out into the broader ecosystem and how you guys are making that more obtainable. But where can people go to learn more about persistence? Should they go to the website, socials? Do you have communities, community resources? Where do you want to direct people?
The traditional places, I mean, you mentioned, so website is persistence.one, so ONE. Then we have our Twitter or X handle is persistence1, also like ONE in the end, so not the number. Telegram, so we have a Telegram community, which is, again, persistence1 chat. Which, I mean, slightly annoying that we have the word chat there, but so it is. We have Discord, pretty big Discord community, the standard discord.persistence.one. We post a lot of content, and like on our blog, you'll see like weekly stuff. But typically, most of the stuff we push, you'll see on our Twitter handle as well. We have some campaigns like on Zeely, if I'm not mistaken. We have some interesting stuff, but typically all of that you would see in our Discord or on our Telegram or on our Twitter. If you follow those, you'll definitely find your way to more of the details that you're looking for.
Excellent. If anyone wants to connect with you directly, where can people find yourself?
Also on Twitter, like my DMs are open. My handle is @D, and then it's my name spelled backwards. Not a lot of people actually, but it's so DNEOREJ. So yeah, that's where like I spend a lot of time, obviously, on Twitter. So reach out in DMs. You can also message me on Telegram. The handle is the same. Also, my DMs are open. Yeah, always happy to connect there, and hopefully in real life on like any of the events. If you kind of see me, recognize me, please come up and say hi.
Guys, make sure to go check out Persistence. Make sure to join their communities, find their resources online, and go spam Jeroen as much as possible. Thanks, man. It's been a great conversation. Let's keep in touch. Maybe we could link up sometime this fall for some events or some conferences. But no, great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. It was really fun. Thank you.